quarantine been as a whole? I mean, I'm sure the world's like falling apart, but how's quarantine been for you and the family?
All in all, it's been good, man. I still had access to some training. So it wasn't the worst thing. The only thing that sucked for me was that I was in New Zealand training at City Kickboxing when this whole thing like really hit. So that sucked that I had to get my trip cut really soon. But aside from that, man, again, I'm fortunate to be from a small town where, I still have access to small gyms and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how it's been, brother.
What was what was the return home like? Was it just like get back on a flight as soon as you can, and did you have any troubles getting in?
Yeah, man. So like my girlfriend and I flew out about a week before like Trudeau announced that everybody needs to get home or you're gonna die kind of thing. So that was kind of our situation. It just kind of popped off like, a week after we touched down. So yeah, it was a tough call, man, but at the time nobody knew what was going on. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah, I'm in Nova Scotia, so we're like next door essentially. I have no access to any sort of. I mean, there's regular gyms and whatnot. You can lift weights, but there's not a whole lot of access to like jiu-jitsu or any sort of martial arts gym. Is that the same there in New Brunswick?
No, so the gyms are starting to open up. Um, just like, my boxing gym is opened up. I'm not sure what guys are doing for jiu-jitsu right now, but I think there's, like small get-togethers going on and stuff. And but yeah, things are starting to open up here. I'm pretty sure we have less cases than you guys as well, though. But yeah, things are slowly starting to pick up back here.
So I'd like to start a little bit about your MMA journey because especially here in Atlantic, Canada, there's not a whole lot of mixed martial artists. Like there's T.J. Grand and John McDessie and Gavin Tucker, but there really isn't a whole lot of MMA prospects coming out of Atlantic, Canada. So what got you involved in the sport?
Before I forget, man, I always forget to mention my boy Ryan Jimmo. We always forget about Ryan Jimmo. So
Yeah.
shout out to Ryan. Um, but what got me started, bro, I come from a Taekwondo background. And, I did that from the age of 6 to about 13. And then I kind of got like jumped right into MMA around 14, 15. There was a local gym around here called Okuden Fight Club. Shout out to Sensei Britt Nickerson, who was like my original MMA coach, and that's kind of how I got started, man. And I've traveled. I've been to TriStar and Rufus Sport and a couple gyms up in Arizona, Power MMA. But yeah, man, that's kind of how I got started.
Speaking of TriStar, a TriStar legend and a Canadian MMA legend is getting inducted in the UFC Hall of Fame. I was surprised that he wasn't already in there. Have you ever had the chance to work with George? And what's your thoughts on George overall?
Yeah, man. So I've done a couple classes like where George has taught when I was, like 21, 22, just fresh at TriStar. I never actually got to like roll or spar with him. That would be a dream of mine for sure. But he's a super nice guy, man. Just the vibe I get from him. I tell people a funny story. The first time I met him, I was in the bathroom at TriStar, and the urinals are like, me to this wall apart, right? Like right beside each other. And all I hear is this voice. It's like, you cannot make these any closer, eh? And I turn around, and it's George, and he told me he had a nice tattoo and stuff. And me being like this 21, 22-year-old kid, right? I was just totally starstruck. But yeah, he seems like an awesome dude, man. And as far as like his legacy, he's definitely up there on my list for pound GOAT, so yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to deny him as pound for pound GOAT. Now that he has that second belt under his to his resume, it's really hard to deny him, man. He's so dominant and such a great guy as well. I wish the same thing, man. If I had the chance to meet him, I would pay a ridiculous amount of money to do so. Something about your career that I noticed is 7 of your fights, your last 7, have all been with Elite One MMA. Why have you stuck with that organization for so long?
Long story short, man, like they just, like there's no reason for me to travel if they can get me fights. They pay me well because I'm the local guy, and I bring in the dough per se for them, right? So it's a business relationship, and I appreciate them and what they've done for my career and bringing me up and all that, right? So yeah, man, there hasn't really been a point of me traveling, and I've been in discussion and fighting in different promotions, but like either it was like short notice or like they're just not nearly paying me as well, man. So it's like there's no point if I can make it to the UFC by fighting locally and having things on better terms for myself, then hell yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one thing I noticed now about the Contender Series is they just brought in two young Canadians and TJ Laramie and Anthony Romero. What do you think it'll take for you to get noticed by the UFC or Bellator or one of these other organizations?
Yeah, I think I'm already on the radar, man, and we're working on some things right now. So like because of this whole COVID thing, excuse me, because of this whole COVID thing, we have to work on a work visa right now, yeah. And so that's what my manager and my coaches and I are working on. But I would love my shot on Contender Series with these fellow Canadians, man. So either that or straight shot in the UFC. I'm down for either or. I'm ready for that now, man. So yeah.
As someone who's on the outside looking in, what are your thoughts on Dana White and the UFC as a whole putting together Fight Island and giving opportunities to these guys who may not be able to get into the United States, even though like not right now, but like at the beginning when they were like pushing it. As someone on the outside, do you think it was a good idea to just be like, let's go ahead, put on these fights? Or do you think, they probably should have taken a step back and continued with the other sports?
What do you mean by continue with the other sports?
Because like soccer and NFL and hockey, they don't waited until later on, like in mid-August or late July. UFC kind of rushed to get these cards out.
Yeah, I see what you mean now. Yeah, man, I think it's a great thing, it gives guys who want to continue fighting and competing and making a living to do so, right? So, I try not to, express my opinion too much on the whole COVID thing because, everybody has the right to their opinion, etc., right? But like, in my opinion, if you want to compete, then compete, and if you don't want to take that risk or whatever your thoughts are, then don't, right? But at least the UFC is giving guys a platform who want to compete right now throughout this whole thing, right? So I think it's an awesome thing, man.
Speaking of Fight Island, there's a big main event there. I'll stick with your division. The main event is Jorge Masvidal taking a fight on 6 days' notice, which is crazy. Across the world, he's eating pizza on the plane. It's insane, and he's fighting Kamaru Usman. What's your thoughts, I guess, on Jorge taking the fight on such short notice, especially with potentially his only ever title shot at stake? And your thoughts on the fight? Who do you think is going to win?
You know what, man? I think Jorge's a smart guy, and I don't know if I buy the whole pizza thing, like. I don't know if that's just kind of a gimmick, to get us thinking he's eating pizza, basically, but yeah, I think he's a smart guy, man. And like you said, this might be his only title opportunity. So either he's getting paid big money, or he's been well prepared for this. So again, I think he's a smart guy, and he wouldn't take this fight if he didn't think he could win it, or he's set for life, right? So I think he made the right call. And as far as the fight goes, if I was a betting man, which I'm not when it comes to fighting, but if I was, hypothetically speaking, I'd probably put my money on Usman winning a decision. But I do think if Usman doesn't stick to the game plan and try to wrestle him, and think that he can go in there and strike with Masvidal, I don't think that's going to play out well for him. So I think he's just a lot more fluid on the feet. Like Usman's got really solid fundamentals, like that Henry Hoof walk you down kind of, real good basic. But I do think Jorge will light him up if they stay upright. But we'll see, man. We'll find out Saturday, right? It's a fight.
Yeah, in the co-main event, Alexander Volkanovski, he's squaring off against Max Holloway. What's your prediction for that one? Obviously, Alexander Volkanovski looked very, very impressive last time out. Max Holloway, arguably the greatest featherweight of all time. Do you think he avenges his loss, or do you think Volkanovski gets it done again?
Man, I really like both those guys, so it's it's tough to pick a winner. But again, if I was a betting man, I'm kind of leaning towards Volkanovski. I think he's a really smart fighter. He's a big guy for the weight class. He's a good athlete. Like he's kind of got all the tools. I like his style. He feints well. He knows how to use his body type to get on the inside, and then the leg kicks. And so, if I was a betting man, I guess I'm leaning towards Volkanovski, but I love Max too, man. So, yeah, may the best man win.
You've speaking of Volkanovski, you went to Australia, New Zealand, spent some time at City Kickboxing. What was it like being over there, and what was the decision behind going over there to get some work in?
I loved it there, man. Unfortunately, I was only there for like a week and a half. I was supposed to spend 6 weeks in New Zealand and 4 weeks just training at City, but that got cut short. But for the time being, man, it was awesome. I made some friends there. I made a good relationship with Doug Vinny, who's like the head kickboxing coach there, so at least I made the connections, and I love the style there, man. What brought me there is that I'm a big fan of Israel Adesanya,
Yeah.
and where the way that I like to fight, I kind of like what they're doing up there, so I just wanted to test it out, really, dude. And I messaged their Instagram, and somebody got back to me, and that was a wrap. I flew there like 2 months later. Yeah.
Is that the plan? Once all this COVID thing is over with, is the plan to go back and maybe get that 6 weeks in?
We'll see, bro. We'll see how life plays out, But definitely at some point, I do want to go back. There's definitely unfinished business there, But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go there right away or anything, because it is on the other side of the world, and takes a bit of planning. But I definitely want to go back, man.
You've spent some time, and you had some hard times either finding a fight or you were out. What was the reason for such a long layoff between your last two fights?
Man, it's been like just hard to get fights, bro. It's been hard to get fights, Yeah, like every 3 months I think I'm fighting, and something happens, and it's 95% of the time it has nothing to do with me, It's either the promotion or the fighter gets injured or whatever, right? But yeah, man, I've been trying, bro. Like Yeah, and that's why again why I'm grateful for Elite One, right? Because at the end of the day, man, they get me fights, you know, and they give me a good notice to prepare, and you know, so. But yeah, as far as the inactivity, man, you know, part of it has been maybe a little bit my fault because I do like, you know, a decent training camp. But that being said, I've accepted all kinds of fights, bro. Like, and you know, they just didn't manifest. So yeah.
For a timeline to your return, is it 6 weeks out? Is it 8 weeks out? What sort of notice would you need right now for a fight?
I mean, you know, I would like 6 weeks. Just because the thing is too, bro, I'm a big 170, right? It has more to do with the weight cut than it has to do with like the preparation, I guess. You know, the preparation's nice too, but you know, I would like 6 weeks, but say in a month from here when, you know, I'm in really good shape because I just kind of got back to full-time training, you know. Give me 3 weeks to make weight, and you know, I'll fight pretty much anyone, bro, as long as it's UFC related. So yeah.
I like that, man. I think staying ready is the key, especially throughout the pandemic. I mean, you've seen people get opportunities on 2 or 3 days' notice. Justin James, for example, I interviewed him on a Monday, and on Saturday he was fighting. It was crazy. So I think like staying ready was the is the key there. For example, if you got a call from the UFC, is that something you'd be willing to take on a short notice, or is it, or are you just I need a full camp regardless?
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Like I said, you know, give me a month or a couple weeks even to get me back in peak condition. Because the thing that I'm learning, brother, is just like I can't be in peak condition all the time. You know, it's just not the way my body works. And again, I'm a big guy for the weight class, right? So I do like a little heads up. But like when I'm in that peak shape, all I need is, you know, 2, 3 weeks to actually make the weight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's kind of where my head's at, man. Like some guys are lucky, you know, they walk around, you know, like somewhat close to their weight class and whatever, right? Unfortunately, man, I'm just a big dude, right? I'm a big welterweight, you know, and so I can't stay, you know, around 185, 190 all the time, you know. So yeah, that's where my head's at with that.
For people who maybe haven't seen your fights, who aren't aware of who you are, what fight of yours would you say, hey, that's the one you got to watch?
Um, you know what, man? The first thing that comes to mind was my third professional fight. You know, even though it was a ways back, I felt like that was like one of my best performances. Like, just yeah, I just felt like I was in my full flow state, you know. And even my last fight, man, it wasn't my I wouldn't say my most exciting fight, but I felt like I got real loose out there, and you know, I did some fun things. So, but yeah, man, I got a ton of fights on YouTube, so check them all out.
If five finishes too, so 5 of 8, that's a really good ratio.
Thanks, bro. Yeah.
And last question before I let you go, what sorts of things have you been doing throughout the pandemic, non MMA related, to keep your mind occupied? Like what TV shows, what video games, what sorts of things have you been doing?
So that's one of my biggest problems, bro, is that like I don't really have any hobbies. So when I'm not training, you know, I'm like I just like to stay active, man. You know, I go rollerblading, I got a paddle board, which is a lot of fun. I go hiking, you know. I love being, you know, in shape and being an athlete, and I love watching fights, bro. Like I'm a big time studier. Um you know, you can probably tell by the way I kind of break down fights. You know, I love studying, and you know, So yeah, outside MMA, bro, I don't do a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Do you
But
do you watch other do you watch Muay Thai or combat jiu-jitsu? Do you watch any of those things?
yeah, sometimes, man, I kind of go through phases. Like sometimes I'm really into boxing, sometimes I'm really into Muay Thai, sometimes I'm kind of really into wrestling, jiu-jitsu. So I kind of bounce all over the place, but yeah, usually I just kind of like whatever style of fighting I feel like I can imply, I'll really study that fighter, and I kind of get obsessed with it, man. So when I'm not actually in the gym, I'm usually watching fights or hanging out with my girlfriend, going for hikes, staying active, that sort of thing.
All right, man. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and hopefully we'll see you out there sooner rather than later, and hopefully it's UFC or Contender Series or one of these other organizations that can really blossom you into something great.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right,
Yeah,
man.
thanks for the.
All right, man. All the best. Stay safe.
Okay,
Wash your
man.
hands. Don't get sick.
Yes, sir. You too, man. Have a good night.